All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Musically Speaking. I am Rod Degeorge, and we are joined today by the incredibly talented Jennifer Batten. Jennifer, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Oh, actually, I'm really frazzled. I just found out I booked myself a flight to Manchester, New Hampshire instead of Manchester, England.
Oh no, yeah, that can be a problem.
Yeah. It's hard to bring the audience to a new location.
Exactly. Does that stuff has that stuff ever happened to you before? I know you do a ton of traveling, so I'm sure uh, little mistakes like that creep up here and there.
Yeah, they're really easy to make, and it's even worse now that there's so much online competition for flights. I saw one today I was looking at that had this little tiny print that said change of airports, which would have meant flying into one airport in New York, taking a taxi, getting all your crap, going across town for a hundred,
Oh, wow.
you know. And if you don't notice that, you can
Oh,
well,
yeah.
travel is pretty unpleasant as it is, but add that kind of stress to it, and yes, many things like that have happened over my career.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I know it's tough sometimes getting to the right place at the right time with all the right gear. Sometimes can be a challenge.
Yeah, in fact, I was just in England last week, and it looks like the baggage handler stole my guitar.
Oh, wow.
It's, yeah, I usually hand carry it to the oversized belt, and
Yeah.
I scan it, and now there's no record of the scan at all.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I'm getting the police involved now. It's just it's a headache, but this is a nice refreshing break. So glad to talk to you.
Yeah, man. I'm glad there's no theft going on today, at least, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you usually try to carry it on, or do you usually store it when you travel?
I can't carry it on because I do a multimedia show, and my carry-on is two
Oh,
projectors, three laptops, and an amp, and
oh,
that's
yeah, yeah. So there's not room for all that for the carry-on. Yeah, that gets tricky.
yeah. Plus carry-on is really, if you take a guitar in a gig bag, it's really up to the person letting you on the plane if they want to mess with you or not.
Yeah.
And so I took it on board for 10 years, and then when I was with Jeff Beck one time, the what do you call them, the airhead hostess. know, they have control, and sometimes they hate their jobs, and they're going to do what they can to pull their weight. And so they said I couldn't take it on board, and they put it under and broke it, and it's just a nightmare.
Oh, I can only imagine. Luckily, so far, I've ran into some hassles, but it always worked out in the end where I was able to carry it on. Hopefully, I can continue that streak for a long time, but you never know. I mean, it's tricky. I know there's laws now that say they're supposed to allow you on, but like you said, someone who's not having a good day, they can make life difficult sometimes.
Yeah, that law is only good for America, and I usually go to other countries, and even so, the small print says if there's room. And
Yeah.
even when I was with Jeff Beck, the guy said there was no room. He took the guitar, and when I got inside, I found there was plenty of room.
Ah,
So
yeah.
you can't win.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, uh, let's go back a little bit to the beginning, how things started out for you. What were some of your early influences, and what got you involved in music?
Uh, Gosh, early influences. I'll tell you about the first record I ever bought was the Singing Nuns.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I got a
That,
little hipper since then. I
uh,
started playing guitar when I was 8, and I guess at that time I was into the Monkees and the Beatles and
oh yeah, yeah.
pop stuff, the Stones. It was on the radio. My sisters were really into Motown, so it was kind of nice to have that. And my dad was into jazz, so I had a huge variety playing in the house. And then in my teen years, I really got into blues, B.B. King, John Lee Hooker. I'd spend my allowance getting those records, and once I figured out what those three chords were, I could jam along in my bedroom.
Oh yeah,
And
that's
then
good.
maybe mid-teens, late teens, I discovered Jeff Beck because Blow by Blow was on the radio a lot.
Oh yeah,
That totally turned my world around, and it opened up my ears. And then when I went to GIT, which is now MI, Musicians Institute in Hollywood,
yeah.
I really got into jazz at that point and started listening to Charlie Parker and Coltrane every day. And so I've kind of been around the musical globe and back a few times.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And uh, now, when you were at GIT, going into it, can you describe your experience? Like, what were some of your strengths and what you may have thought as weaknesses going in, and how did you address them to become someone who later became an instructor and then the guitarist for the biggest pop icon ever, Michael Jackson? Can you describe that journey a little bit?
Well, yeah, sure. I saw an ad when the school was just getting started for a weekend symposium. So I drove from San Diego to LA and did that, and just about everything was over my head. All these jazz players were talking way beyond me, and I ended up taking a test to see if I could get in, and I flunked. So it
Oh.
was suggested that I study with this jazz guy, Peter Sprague, in San Diego to
Hmm.
get me prepped. Because although I had been taking lessons since I was 8, I was only taught a bunch of different songs and different techniques, but not the tools of the trade. I didn't know arpeggios or harmonic minor, a lot of the tools. So studying with Peter was really, really intense because he's a bebop guy. And in 6 months, I had studied enough to go back and be accepted for the school.
Oh, great.
But I think, just about the only one that had never played a gig before. So I was definitely at the bottom
Oh,
compared
wow.
to my classmates. Plus, I was the only female in the class, which was kind of shocking.
Oh, yeah. Now, how did that feel to you? Did that give you extra drive, or did that feel a little intimidating, or both? Did one feed the other?
Uh, I would say both. Um, but at that age, I was just a sponge. So I just jumped into class and did everything that was asked of me and just did my best. And I ended up getting an award at graduation for most improved player.
Oh, great.
So that was encouraging.
Yeah. And how did that lead to becoming an instructor at the school?
Well, once you go through the course, it certainly changed a lot since then, I'm sure. I graduated in 79 and started teaching there in, gosh, 84, 85. Um, so they knew that I knew the course
Right.
and I knew what other people needed to know. I did a couple things. I had a class where I helped people keep up if they were getting behind, and another class that was called open counseling, which is you just hang out in a class for 4 hours and anybody comes in at any time and you just share ideas with them.
Yeah.
So that was just actually that was really difficult because I would get a lot of the same people every day, and sometimes I would go home thinking I just showed them everything I know about music and there's nothing left. So
You're
I,
like,
I,
well,
I really spent a lot of time studying. Like I'd bring in Joe Pass chord solos and show those, and just learn Satriani and Vi solos and bring those in. So that kicked my butt to just keep things entertaining for people.
oh, I bet that sounds like it. Now, the few years in between you being a student and becoming an instructor, were you teaching privately or were you gigging or what were you doing?
Both. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I ended up in a band that went through a lot of incarnations. When I first saw them, they opened for Lee Ritenour and they were doing fusion, and I thought, man, I really want to be in that band. And I didn't do anything about contacting them, and within 2 weeks, they called me. So the energy was in the air.
Yeah, that's great.
And pretty much as soon as I joined them, it turned into a pop cover band.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and I was with them 3 or 4 years, and during that time, we ended up doing some weddings, doing cover band gigs, and also doing fusion gigs. So it was a really great band to cut my stage teeth with.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Yeah. Now, while you were an instructor at GIT, is that when you heard about the auditions for the Michael Jackson gig?
Yeah, it was. Uh, Gosh, I only worked at GIT 2 days a week, so I remember getting the call on a day I was teaching somewhere else, And
Oh,
back then it
okay.
was a cassette answering machine. And I got 3 calls in one day from the musicians referral service saying, I got an audition for you. And the next one, you got to call back. And the third one's, where the hell are you? This is important. So a few days later, I went in and uh, I had canceled all my work in the meantime to just stay home and work on his tunes. And I went in and there was no band. So the only instruction I was given there was to play some funky rhythm because that would be 90% of my job.
Oh, yeah.
So I improvised something, then I started soloing. I played the Giant Steps tapping solo that I worked out for my first
Oh,
record.
yeah, yeah, right.
In that cover band in San Diego that I was in, we had been playing the Beat It solo
Oh,
or the
gotcha.
Beat It song for a couple
Yeah.
of years. I already knew the solo, and I ended the audition by playing that.
Oh, cool. Now, how did that how did that feel when you prepared for playing songs and you got in and things shifted? And also, could you give any mental tips? Because sometimes that can throw a player when things are totally different than they expected, and this is a big opportunity. You know?
Yeah, actually, for players that are auditioning, I mean, just spend as much time as you possibly can learning the hits, especially if you're not given a specific list. For me, I was in 5 different bands at the time, and Van Halen was the biggest thing going in the 80s, and
Yeah.
so it seemed like every band had a special solo spot for the guitar player. And so in all those bands I was with, I had a solo spot. So once I found there was no band, it was actually pretty comfortable to do that.
Oh, okay, great.
I was used to doing it. And also, when you're playing with a band, there's so many variables that can screw you up, like the mix, for
Yeah.
starters. If you can't hear yourself or if somebody's just blasting too loud, it can really throw you off or screw up your opportunity to shine. So it worked out.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, definitely the mix. I've been doing this a long time, and when people ask, "Do you ever get nervous?" and my thing is, my biggest concern is, can I hear myself? Because
Oh.
when you do get up on stage and you can't hear what you're playing, your fingers react differently. The pick against the string reacts differently. You may dig in more, and there's a lot of variables. So yeah, that definitely. I can see how that might be a relief where, okay, I can hear myself, now I can just play. That's cool.
Yeah, the variables can be super frustrating, and unfortunately, that never ends. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you, my personal journey has really improved in the last, I don't know, 5 or 7 years. For one thing, one of the many things I do is a solo multimedia show.
Right.
And I have any player out there, including myself, has suffered with really crap monitors.
Yeah.
Even if you have a great mix, it's like the distortion and the nastiness and the horns hitting you is just painful. And I
Yeah.
think that's got more to do than anything with whatever frequencies I've lost in my hearing. So we all strive to have more control. And
Right.
one thing that happened 2 years ago is now I can take my own amp head with me. It's a newish amp called Amp One by Blue Guitar. And the thing weighs 2 pounds. You can fit it in your gig bag or your carry-on, which I do. So I have a full-on 100-watt 4-channel tube amp that I take with me everywhere.
Oh, great.
And
Yeah.
so all you need is a speaker, which is another variable. But
Yeah.
I also, because of the hearing loss I've had, my ears are super sensitive and I can't stand playing with loud bands, which is almost every band.
Yeah.
So I bought a very expensive pair of in-ear monitors by Sensophonics called 3D Ambient. And they're connected to a box. They have a microphone in each ear as well as 2 drivers. And so I can listen to the band at a third of the level that they're playing at through those
Oh,
microphones.
yeah.
And one band I'm playing with in UK, I'm lucky because I get my own mix and I can mix it with an iPad.
Yeah.
So that's as much control as you can get, and then you can dial in ambience of the outside sound as you choose from that. So that's the best case scenario I've had my whole life.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Now you touched on something that was a a question I had later down the line, but I'd like to get into that now. The evolution of your tone over the years. Your distorted tone and lead tone seems a little more organic and warm than it may have been in the past. Is that due to that new amp that you get to take with you and you have more control now?
Absolutely. That's why. Yeah. Because, at least 95% of my work in the last, I don't know how many decades, I have to jump on a plane.
Right.
So, and then I started doing a lot of workshops for Digitech, and I would use their processors and their modeling, and I kind of got used to that. And then when this amp came along, I thought, holy crap, I didn't realize what I was missing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because with the digitized stuff, if you roll back on the volume, it just sounds like crap. But when you have a real tube amp, it's a whole different beast, and you just get such richer tones from every pickup that I'm using more pickups now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I noticed that in some of your later live videos that I've seen, that it just seemed a little more organic and a little less processed, and I was wondering if you changed amps, but yeah, that's great. Now you have something you can take with you.
Yeah, plus I'll tell you about another new element of control that I've added is Blue Guitar has also come out with a new speaker emulator, and it's got 16 different impulse response speaker models to choose from, as well as a virtual mic placement knob. So now I take away the element of, it doesn't matter what speaker cabinet I am given or what mic or the mic placement. And usually I find the sound guys tend to treat a speaker like a bullseye and head straight for the center where it's the harshest sound possible.
Right.
So now I can bypass them with that too.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something I've run into a lot, and I've talked to Greg Howe about this as well. Some soundmen are like, this is a better mic. This works best. It has higher frequency range. And with distorted guitar, you may not want that high end. Like a 57 automatically rolls off a little that super high end, and it may make for a smoother tone. And some soundmen say, this is the mic I'm using. This is where I'm placing it. And you're like, in your ears, if you use in-ear monitors, you're like, this is not how my guitar is supposed to sound. And yeah, sometimes it can be a battle.
Well, I have a theory about sound guys too, that if they're good, once they get good, their hearing is pretty damaged. So they don't even hear the high end that everybody else is getting.
Yeah.
And then there's a chunk of sound guys that don't really hear well. They just went to engineering school and they work with numbers.
Exactly.
And graphs. Yeah. So I'm all about control and have no problem telling people I have control issues.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it makes for a happier performance for you and later the audience then.
Oh God, yeah. That's everything.
That's for sure, man. Now, listening to your original music, you have a certain uniqueness to your sound. It has an element of the unexpected, sort of in a similar realm as like Zappa or Beck or even Vai, where it's not always predictable. You can't, like, it takes listening to it, and it has nice unexpected turns. Was that something that you had was a conscious decision, or is that just how you hear things in your head?
Yeah, it was conscious to try to be original.
Right.
And gosh, I remember at one point, I think when I was in guitar school, I was thinking all of the original guitar sounds are taken. There's Pat Metheny, there's Robin Ford, Van Halen, and there's nothing left, And one of my big influences at GIT was Joe DiOrio.
Oh yeah.
He was a bebop player, but he really got into using wide intervallic steps, which he got from working with Eddie Harris, and John Coltrane also got into that from a book by Nicholas Slanimsky called The Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns, which is an extremely exhaustive study of melodic possibles.
Oh, that's good.
So I got really into that, and that's part of my playing. And I think it's just if you plant a seed in your own consciousness that you want to do something that's original, then when you hear other things, when something original pops up, you really latch onto it, as well as exploring yourself for something a little different. So I take that as a great compliment that you caught that.
Well, yeah. Also, it seems another question that I had regarding this is it seems like you have a great understanding of what notes or scale tones create certain tension. Now, are you aware of that? Is that in your thinking, oh, this is the ninth, I want to hang on this, or you just know this part of the scale feels that way, or do you see it in more shapes on the guitar and relate that to the feels, or do you go through the thought process of scale degrees and stuff like that?
I think it's more trying to keep my own ears interested.
Gotcha,
You know,
yeah.
because every player knows the stuff they know, and you just want to stretch to make it more interesting for yourself. As far as outside tones, the usual flat five is something I love. You know, the blues tone is something everybody goes for, and also on minor chords, regardless of what kind of minor it is, I like putting in the sharp seven for tension.
Gotcha, yeah.
Maybe not hanging on it, but I like it. And I'll tell you what, I had a little trouble with my hands this last year, and so I went to lighter strings.
Uh-huh.
And I'm experimenting with eights, and it's allowing me to do all of these really intricate, extra slinky bends that I wasn't used to doing before. So I'm really going bend crazy now.
Yeah. Now you also have an element to world music in your playing with these bends. Are you leaning more towards like sitar type phrasings, or?
Well, I will say that's a goal that I'm not working hard on, but maybe the planting that seed is helping out. And there's one thing it's really difficult to do, and I've done it on a few tunes, but I don't do it live, is taking the octave up mode of the whammy pedal and trying to get a real, I guess, Indian exotic sound out of that. And last year I toured with Uli John Roth, and he does something with the whammy pedal up an octave too. He does such a great job with it. He has a really clean tone, and just obviously has spent a lot of time on it. But yeah, I love the exotic stuff. You know, again, it's something that's out of the norm for Americans anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, talking about touring, that tour with Uli John Roth and Andy Timmons. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch that, but a friend of mine did, and he said it was an amazing show, and it was great when you guys got out to play. When you were touring with that, were you like, oh, I love the way he does that, I love the way he does that? Do you find touring with other guitar players expands your approach, your personal approach?
Yeah, it definitely does, sometimes in more subtle ways, but I'm aware of things I took from Andy that just worked their way into my playing. Even the way he stands, it's gone now, but for maybe 6 months I was doing that. You know, I don't know. It's unintentional absorption of certain things.
Yeah,
it's more Andy than Uli. I don't know why, but that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, talking about touring, what was it like touring with such a big production such as Michael Jackson? Did you get to develop personal relationships, or is it such a machine that everything is scheduled and it's 100% business all the way?
Oh, as far as the band, we remained friends. I mean, 2 of them are dead now, but we do keep in touch from time to time.
Oh, great.
As far as Michael, I mean, he was pretty separated from us, and the most time we had with him was at rehearsals. Anybody could talk to him that wanted to.
Yeah.
But once we were on the road, he was gone before we ended the last note for security reasons.
Yeah.
But we would all meet him before a show, and we'd have a group prayer, so it wasn't a cold machine by any stretch.
Gotcha, yeah. Now, in your career, you got to tour with Michael Jackson, one of the biggest names in the pop world, and you also toured for a few years with Jeff Beck, one of the biggest names in the guitar world. Now, I would assume they're very different worlds on and off stage when you're on the road. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you're right about that. Musically, it's 180 degrees different. With Michael, I was the only one that got to improvise, and it
Wow.
depended on what tour. But other than that, I mean, there's so many cues, from wardrobe changes to pyro cues, that you have to do the songs in the same order every night,
Right.
which was fine. I mean, the focus of that, as far as a guitar player, was playing parts,
Yeah.
the grooves that were on the record, and then playing the beat it solo
Uh-huh.
was always a nightly challenge. Some nights were better than others. Still, I'm asked to do that.
Now, you're not, let's make this clear to everyone. You're not just asked to play the Beat It solo. You had to play it while, like, dancing around and going through the stage in this costume and everything. I mean, it's not just like standing there playing. You had to put on a show as well.
Yeah, there's a couple fun stories with that. On the Bad tour, he wanted to have different costumes and different surprises for every tour. So the first tour, he wanted it to be dark when I played, and then have me lit up with fiber optics coming out of my hair. And so I ended up having a black leather jumpsuit that I would get into, and my fiber optics were controlled by a computer operator as I walked across the stage.
Right.
Well, the first time they turned out the lights in rehearsal, it was so dark I couldn't see my frets. And trying to play the Beat It solo with no lights on is a hell of a challenge. So I ended up putting glow-in-the-dark tape on my fret markers.
Gotcha, yeah.
Which was super helpful, but in most of the places we played, there was enough ambient light. I really didn't need it after that. And every tour was different. There was one tour, they had two different costumes for me. One was Viking horns that came on my head, which they were fine. It attached easily and it was lightweight, but the alternate costume was just batshit ridiculous. They took measurements of my shoulders, and they had this plastic bustier I was supposed to wear, which makes it really difficult and uncomfortable to have a guitar on.
Yeah.
So we ditched that pretty shortly. And also they had a giant dragon attached to my back that attached to my shoulders. And it was so heavy, people noticed when I was walking out to do the solo, they go, "You look really unhappy." And I was, because I felt like my back was going to break. So I think I only wore that twice before they got rid of it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't even remember what they did for the history tour. But it's definitely a challenge. But that was not the worst challenge. Was playing Dirty Diana when I was supposed to chase him behind the band.
Oh.
Because I couldn't hear myself. The speakers were facing the other way.
Yeah.
And after a week or so, one of the techs put an extra speaker on the ramp. This was only in America. There was a ramp that went behind the band, and the speaker, they're so directional. They're good for about 3 feet. So I have no idea if I was bending in tune. I couldn't hear myself till I got back. And plus, running while you're playing.
I know.
That's definitely a communication problem between the choreographers and the players.
Yeah, and that's something that they don't understand. It's like, it's just like even something as simple as playing a guitar that's very headstock heavy. If you're down near the nut and you have to jump up to the 12th fret and tap, the strings in guitar aren't where they were when you left. It moves, and if you're trying to do something as athletic as running and playing, you're bouncing. It's not easy to get all the right notes like that.
Yeah, I think one of the worst situations was I did the American Music Awards with Britney Spears one year. And they called me, the day before. I don't know what the story was, but so I spent as much time as I could getting repetitions in, because there was going to be no rehearsal. It's, you're playing for a bazillion people.
Right.
And then I get to the thing the next day, and the choreographer's got all these moves for me to memorize. And I'm like, oh, God. And it was it was bizarre, and there were certain things I just put my foot down and said a guitar player, the rest of the band and Brittany were all on track, and
Oh,
I was the only live player, and I said, you're not going to get notes out of me if you have me doing what you want.
yeah,
It's just that simple.
yeah, yeah, and you have to do that. I mean, because it's gonna come across not good on your part, if you're trying to remember moves and you're not getting the notes played properly, and that's
Yeah, well, I think a lot of choreographers got ideas from seeing MTV, and
right.
everybody's going to playback with that, and they can do backflips and sound fabulous.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Now, with Jeff Beck, I'm assuming that was a lot more free. I'm assuming he loves to improvise a lot in that.
Yeah, that was the exact opposite. Instead of playing parts and being the same every night, he wanted to be pushed.
Oh, yeah.
So it was all about improv with him, and so we would do what we could to take songs in different directions every night. It was exhausting, mentally exhausting because he's a different kind of cat, man.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
he goes with the breeze. Yeah, I mean, he wants to be inspired, and if he plays one night and he's bored, why not blame the band?
Yeah.
Which honestly, he didn't. He didn't. He was really kind to us all and respectful and appreciative. But I think we took it upon ourselves, like, oh shit, he's bored. We got to do something and take these songs in a different area.
Exactly. Yeah. So even if he wouldn't say anything to you about your playing, he could feel like he wasn't inspired that night, and then automatically you're like, oh my God, we're not doing our job. We're supposed to support him and inspire him.
Yeah, and to be fair, if he was bored or uninspired, he would blame himself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But he was, I heard stories about him in the early days, and thank God I didn't know him back then, because he was really, really super consistently at the top of his game all 3 years I was with him.
Yeah.
It was really inspiring to us. I mean, God, it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, that's one thing I think is a general consensus amongst guitar players, that Jeff Beck is one of those players who just keeps getting better. And, it's definitely an inspiration where he can just take a couple notes and hit you square in the chest with them,
Yeah, and his tone is, I mean, if you had his tone, you'd just be inspired. That's
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah,
He's got a setup that he started when I joined him, where he would have two 12s separate, slaved off his Marshall in front of him, along with the monitors, and then he's got his guitar in the side fills as well. So it was just a surround sound of glorious backbone.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. And every time I'd come off the road, I'd work on my sound and try to get something else happening and think, okay, I got it now. And then I'd get on stage with him and it'd still sound like a mosquito.
In comparison, yeah.
Well, yeah, because I was only coming out of one cabinet.
Yeah, yeah.
And I suppose I was coming out of his monitors as well, but there's no comparison.
Right, right. Now, you do or at least you did. I'm not sure if you're still doing the clinics of your self-empowerment for the modern musicians. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that came about a couple of years ago. In fact, I toured it 2 summers ago. I'm a big fan of TED Talks.
Oh, yeah.
TED.com, and it's, the brilliant minds around the world doing 20-minute talks on their subject. And I loved how it was just really concise and inspiring for the most part. It was a combination of wanting to do that, wanting to do something separate or different than I had done before, and a few Skype lessons I had given where I was always floored that students didn't know what I did as far as the tools available to them these days. And
Right.
so I wanted to put it out there in a big way, as far as software that can really help them, and combined with my frustration of playing with bands of all levels that don't learn tunes to the level I would expect.
Yes.
And especially when I fly to Europe and we have 4 hours to rehearse a 90-minute show and then we play it that night, you have to do your homework.
Yeah.
Just have to. And players of all levels just don't. I mean, if you've been playing a long time, you should know yourself, which
Right.
means knowing how much repetition you need to be able to pull it off on the
Yeah.
first night.
Yeah.
So, I talk about transcribe software, which is, I could develop a church around that because I'm an evangelist for it, where you can not only slow stuff down, but you can EQ it and EQ the bass out of it.
Right.
And take the center track out, which is vocals or lead guitar. So you instantly have the next best thing to actually having the master tracks, what you're trying to learn.
Right. Yeah.
So in this day and age, there's absolutely no excuse why not to have a tune nailed. I mean, granted, you can play tricks on you a bit, but it's nothing like in the olden days, man. I mean, I used to take cassette tapes and run it through a pitch changer and take the cassette machine down an octave and then repitch it back up. And the effort I went to try to get stuff accurate was, 1/10 of what the kids today have to do.
Yeah.
So that's just one segment that I really dig into. And then I get into travel and just trying to teach people the school of hard knocks I've been through and how to excel without running through the same mistakes I did. So I haven't done that in 2 years. I do have an intention of getting a course out there at some point, and I will be doing one in the Berkshires this summer.
Oh yeah? Well, that's cool.
So that's got a fire under me to fire it back up and improve it. And God, I was doing so much work at the last minute for that seminar that there's a few things I never did proofread. I'm scared to even go back and look.
Yeah. Now you also talk about what you take in, whether it be mentally and like nutrition-wise and all that stuff. Everything that you take in affects what you bring out. Do you get into like any type of meditation or something for your mind to get you in the right frame of mind, stuff like that?
I do. I went into a pretty extensive nutrition thing because there's a lot of evidence against gluten, especially the modern day gluten, which is the American gluten is so bad that other countries won't even accept it across their borders. But it's been proven to cause brain fog. Between that and the distractions of cell phone and Facebook and all this crap that's rewiring people's brains.
Yeah.
I think it's 10 years ago, the average attention span was 36 seconds and now it's 7.
Wow.
So
that's a huge difference.
Oh, it's massive. And it really shows, especially if you talk to teenagers. It's like, God, trying to hold their attention is impossible. So I get into talking about that and how the brain works and how to best learn things, which I only recently started doing since I studied that. So it's things that come into your brain, positive and negative, how that affects you. Like if you watch the 11 o'clock news and go to bed, it's the worst thing you could do for your brain, because that's where your brain is going to be running through loops all night instead of on music.
Right.
So just little things like that. I figure even if 20% of what I say sticks, it can help people.
Yeah, that's great.
I think I missed part of your question there.
Oh, no, no, that's what I was talking about. Like what you take in, whether it be mentally or physically, I know that's something that has always intrigued me. And you find some students who you kind of hint on that when you're teaching them, and some students like just gobble that stuff up and want to learn more about it. And other students may not even think that that doesn't mean much, But I think, at least from my personal experience, it means a great deal. And I think there's enough research done out there to support what I have experienced, So I think that's great that you're taking that out there and opening it up,
Yeah, when you think of music lessons, you don't think of all these elements. And I
Exactly. Yeah.
think there's so many sites and books and DVDs available on scales and arpeggios and different musical concepts. And I've never seen the kind of stuff that I'm offering out there. So
Yeah.
I need to stay off the road long enough to actually put this in a viable thing. Because I've had a lot of inquiries about it. And the tour, like I said, is 2 summers ago. And
Yeah.
so people can't get it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. And even just different ways to be creative, opening your mind up and tapping into that subconscious part of your mind and recognizing signs that it's given you. Once you get into that stuff, you can get ideas and flush them out much quicker. And to me, at least from my experience, they seem more authentic, like more original, more coming from you as opposed to copying someone else's stuff, you know?
Yeah, which I think that's super valuable when you're young
Yeah.
to learn anybody's solos that you like and then tear them apart and figure out why do you like them? Why, the little nuances is where the candy really is.
Right.
But as you grow older, I think there's a lot less satisfaction in doing that. And being able to dig deep inside and make something personal and original is a hell of a lot harder. But in the end, that's where the satisfaction comes in, and that's why you want to keep doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, hopefully you can get that out again. And even if you could get a course that's available to people, that's even touching more people than you'd be able to in person, so that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Now, as far as you're doing a lot of touring, and it sounds like a lot of your tours are so many different things. So I'm assuming your practice regimen today really depends on what show is coming next. Can you talk about your practice regimen today versus when you were at GIT?
Sure. Yeah. GIT was, God, it was just nonstop. Just trying to keep up with the classes. That's all that was. But for several years after that, I kept up the idea of having a timer. I used an egg timer, and for an hour I'd do sight reading and then switch to ear training, switch to jamming or whatever element. And I did that for many years. And then as I started gigging more and more, it was more focused on the tunes I'd be playing that night. And now I don't have any kind of regimen. It's all about what the next project is. If it's I get a lot of recording requests, and so people will send me waves and apes to work with, and I like to spend a couple days just jamming along with it before I try to record at all.
Yeah.
So that's the focus of that time. In the last, I don't know, 5-6 years, I've been going to Europe a lot, and I've had a lot of different situations. So I've had my band do some original stuff and covers, and playing with other bands as well. There's a band in Poland I play with every year for a couple of weeks, and we just added a singer, so that's a bunch of other new songs.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, so the last couple of years, I've just been going with the wind, and whatever has a paycheck at the other end is what I'm working on.
Yeah, right. You now live in the Pacific Northwest, is that correct?
Yes, I escaped LA after 20 years.
Yeah. Now, after traveling all over the world, was there something in particular that drew you here, or that's just where the chips landed?
Well, I just knew I wanted to not be in LA.
Right.
And almost all of my work, I would jump on a plane anyway. Right. And I just realized that I wasn't even participating in the city because it's such a pain in the ass to get around. The traffic is horrendous. So, when you go to see a concert, you fight through the traffic. You have to leave super early. Parking is an issue, and on and on and on. And even my friends were either on the road or busy or just across town, and you have to get into traffic for it. So I just knew I wanted to be somewhere else. And I bought books on 4 different cities, and Portland seemed the most intriguing. And my sister had moved south of Portland in Oregon a couple years prior. And although I was a little reticent about the rain, I actually love it.
Oh yeah,
Portland won, and it's a really creative community, so much more friendly than LA.
yeah,
I mean, I made friends immediately, and honestly, after 20 years in LA, there's only a couple people I still stay in touch with.
yeah, yeah. It's totally different. Totally different animal out here. I am in Central Oregon, and I moved from about 50 miles west of Philly. I was only 2 hours from New York City. So compared to the East Coast, just the mindset, the people, how friendly they are, it's a totally different world here. And I'm assuming, like, I've been to LA, but I haven't lived there. I'm assuming it's very similar, totally different. You know, how friendly the people are, how willing they are to strike up conversations.
Yeah, I think it's like free range chicken versus chicken and grown up in a cage.
That's a good analogy, actually. You know?
Because you put too many chickens together, they start pecking each other and getting irritable, and they're
Yeah,
mentally ill,
yeah,
absolutely mentally ill. But when you have your freedom that is the way we're meant to live, it
right.
just opens up your mind and you're more loving.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Now, what do you have in store for the rest of this year and next year? Can we expect some new material from you, or is it just filled up with touring? Or
Actually, I do have a record coming out in September that
oh,
was
great.
just by default. I was kind of over the whole thing because of digital theft,
Right.
and you never make your money back. And so I was just over it. But I was hired to do some sessions in Chicago and flown in a couple of times for a singer named Mark Scher.
Okay.
And the record is produced by Jim Peterick, who wrote for Survivor,
Oh yeah.
uh, was in Survivor actually. And Mark, the singer, decided that my work changed the project so much that he wanted me to be a bigger part of it. So now the record is called Battle Zone, and on the cover it has his last name what is it, Scherer Batten.
Ah.
So that it was a rather painless way to have a new project out. So it's coming out I think the middle of September. I don't know if there's an exact date yet, but he's a wonderful singer, just really, really
Yeah.
great tone and pitch and everything. And it's kind of 80s Foreigner. Let's say
Oh, okay.
for a
Yeah.
better analogy.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's something to look forward to. That's great, man.
Yeah, very, very different from my guitar records for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now, I assume you have a lot of touring coming up as well.
I have some time off this summer, which I'm pretty damn excited about. I
Ah,
just
that's
came
great.
off 2 months off the road, still missing my guitar from the last flight.
Yeah. That's a
So,
shame.
um, and I'm going back into September for sure. I might have that would be to Europe and UK, and I might have a thing in Brazil end of August, but it's not confirmed yet.
Now, are they solo shows where you're doing your multimedia thing?
Uh, no. Well,
Oh.
there usually is a few of those, and that's how it's starting out. Yeah. So I'm out for 2 months, and I usually ended up doing at least a half a dozen of my solo shows, some workshops. This last time out, I ended up doing 4 workshops for the Fishman wireless MIDI system called Triple Play. I did 3 or 4 solo shows, working with a Michael Jackson tribute and the Polish band, and it's always a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Always switching hats, huh?
You know what? And it's so difficult for my brain. I mean, Jesus, and not so much shifting gears for the music, but trying to figure, okay, now I'm going from Europe to UK. I need 6 different adapters, and I need this
Oh yeah.
equipment. You know?
That's the stuff that no one talks about, but that's very real details that have to be taken care of for the show to go on.
Yeah, it's super annoying, but there's no way around it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, we're definitely looking forward to the future as far as seeing you live and this new album. That would be great. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, so it's definitely a pleasure for me to get a chance to talk to you. I want to thank you
Oh,
for taking the time.
oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and sorry about the no video.
Oh,
It's I'm still in my pajamas with no makeup. I didn't.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. It was great. It's great to talk to you, and I'm sure the listeners will get a ton of useful information out of this.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.